you'll take a few minutes, please, and tell us a little bit about why this position at TCAT McMinnville is of interest to you, and a little about your background that makes you qualified and your experiences for the position.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll start off on a personal level, talking about the model of a TCAT. TCATs, as you well know, they're based on competency-based education. And that's what I grew up in. I grew up starting in competency-based education at a vocational school in high school. I graduated high school as a certified electrician, residential electrician. Continued on in Northeast State. Then years after, went through a pipe fitter apprenticeship, which was all competency-based education. And after graduating that apprenticeship, went through one of the local industries management programs, and then worked closely with the TCAT, hiring welders and pipe fitters from the Elizabeth TCAT. So, you know, one of the reasons that I'm very interested to be a TCAT president is, one, on a personal level, I understand competency-based education, how important it is to your community, to your region. Two, I understand how important it is to our industry. And, you know, and three, how important it is to offer this to students as well. It's important to offer a competency-based model that can be structured to an industry. And so that, you know, in a nutshell, I enjoy the model here. And you know, I've got a proven track record back in Northeast of creating relationships with industry, with the community, and with the students.
Questions?
All right, let's don't be shy. Nobody's been shy all day.
You two have always went first. We were waiting.
Okay.
We were standing in line over there.
They're all tired.
Tell us from your perspective, what is the role of a TCAT president? Give us kind of your outline of what you would see yourself doing if offered the position in the first 100 days, and then maybe up to 5 years into the position.
So,
3 parts.
okay, so the role of the TCAT president is to build relationships in the community with the staff, with the faculty, and I think in the first 100 days, it's very important that you just come in and listen. Listen to your faculty, listen to your staff, listen to your students, and then listen to your community. That would be my plan to learn how your programs are working. I understand your programs, but just understand the intricacies of those programs would be my thing, to understand those programs. You know, my leadership style is build relationships. Build relationships with, again, people at the school, with the students, and local industry. Because we're here to serve. We're here to serve not only our students, but the president's here to serve the staff, and but the school's here to serve our community.
All right, I'll go next. So you're the 4th candidate today. I tried to think back about what it was like interviewing all 4 of you folks on Zoom versus seeing you in person today. So really glad we got to see you in person. Your experience level is extremely relatable because you've had the kind of training that we do here at this TCAT. So I might have waited till the end to ask you this, but I want to go ahead and, you know, you talked a little bit about this. Having that type of experience and being trained that way in your life, while you're not a hometown guy to this area, you certainly are to this type of training. So some people might think, yeah, that's the best kind of candidate to have as president. Some might say, well, you know, it'd also be neat to have somebody that thinks completely different and brings a different perspective. So tell us why you think that type of training and that experience you've had makes you the best candidate. You touched on that a second ago, but go a little deeper on that now.
Well, I would say just that training alone would not qualify me to be president here. I think when you look at the training that I had through a local industry there, Eastman Chemical, I went through their management training program, which is a very extensive 4-week management training program. Also completed my MBA, Master's of Business Administration. So I've got experience in understanding how TBR works, how the education system works. So, you know, I think what gives me the edge is that initial training, but also given the leadership training that I've had to lead people and to lead organizations, the experience that I've had in leading RCAM, the Regional Center for Advanced Manufacturing. You know, we've got a proven track record of working with many different companies in our region and ensuring that we meet their needs. You know, we've got a three-part mission at RCAM. Number one is to meet the needs of our existing industry. Number two is to create a pipeline with our K through 12 partners of skilled labor for that existing industry. And then number three is to work with our economic development partners. It's very important that as an economic development partners, that I may have said this in the first interview, but when you're bringing someone to this region to possibly locate a new manufacturing facility, it's very important that they understand you've got a comprehensive way to train a workforce. And that's exactly what a TCAT brings.
Did you know Parker Smith when he was still working?
Very well.
He was on the board when I joined. I was with him for about a year. He was a great job.
I met with Parker 2 weeks ago.
Okay, good.
He just made a donation to the college.
All right.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
What do you think the biggest educational challenge is for a rural community like Warren County and the Upper Cumberland region is right now?
I'm assuming you're talking about technical education wise. As I said to the chancellor earlier today, I think the biggest challenge right now lies with the parents. Over the past few years, I think we've seen higher education and K-12 work really well together when it comes to dual enrollment. But a lot of times, I don't think mom and dad either understand skilled trades or want their kids to pursue skilled trades. I think it's very important that third leg be brought into the conversation. You know, one of the things that we did back in 2019 at RCAM was we had a thing called Family Engagement Nights. We brought all 9 elementary schools there on a different separate night with the parents, and we would have events, different career challenges for the kids, but we'd bring mom and dad in to talk about what we could offer, whether it was Tennessee Reconnect or Tennessee Promise, understanding opportunities and pathways for their kids, but also for themselves. So the biggest challenge, to answer your question directly, is a culture issue against skilled trades.
So to build upon that, what would your plan be for reaching students that don't know about how great it could be to go to a technical college, some that don't learn that well in a university setting, who would actually learn better to learn a trade and would prosper better? What would your plan be for reaching those people? And not necessarily a K through 12, but even a 25-year-old such as me who's not in it. How would you reach those kind of people?
Okay. I think I've said this often back in Northeast Tennessee, we've got 40,000 adults without a high school diploma. And you know, we've got a pretty strong adult education program. So I think a strategy for all TCATs and all community college going forward, we've got to have a strong relationship with our adult education. You know, just as we're providing dual enrollment opportunities for our kids in our high schools, we need to be providing those opportunities for our adult ed students. That adult ed, you know, you hear education with a destination. You know, those adult ed folks, they need to hear about an education with a destination as well, other than finishing that high set. You know, so my plan would be to ensure that we've got that connection with our high schools, ensure that we're making that connection with parents, and ensuring that we're making that connection with our adult education folks as well. And it comes down to a strategic marketing plan. You know, technical education is very valuable, but anything that's valuable without a marketing plan, it's really hard to sell. So I think it comes down to a marketing plan.
Okay, thank you.
Gives me another question that
Yes, sir.
leads to this. You know, with Tennessee Reconnect, a lot of young adult learners, about 25-year-olds, 30 years old, you know, they have a full-time job and maybe juggling a young family. So Talk to me a little bit about your ideas about mini courses or flexible scheduling or modified schedules in order to accommodate these adult learners that I feel like are still critical part of our workforce, who may feel like they don't have the skills now to work or don't have the time to go back and get the training.
I definitely am for structured mini courses. Even when we talk about micro credentialing, I think we hear a lot about stackable credentials in the industry now. And I've heard some people that maybe they're not very high on stackable credentials, and they say that maybe they're not going to give you the skills you need to enter the workforce. But I would tend to disagree with that, because when we talk about stackable credentials, things like NIMS, things like Skills USA, I probably said this in my first interview, but when it comes to workforce development starts with helping students understand purpose and confidence, giving them the confidence to pursue that purpose. And those mini courses, micro credentials, that's exactly what they're doing. The student, they may learn the TORC certification in through NC3, and they may not be ready to hit your industry floor, but they've gotten the confidence, they know how to do something, right? And that's where workforce development starts. If we think it starts with me teaching someone how to weld, it's not. But we got to teach somebody purpose and confidence first. But all for that, what I think you have to ensure that the community's on board with that, and ensure that there's a need for that as well, which I greatly believe there is.
Since I'm asking questions, I'm going to ask another one. Part of this also, your ideas about reentry programs at our jail and prisons, and what role TCAT can play in the re-education and the restoration of lives of those folks that have been incarcerated.
I think, when folks are incarcerated, they're paying their debt to society. And are we really serious that they paid their debt or not? So we've got to, I think they have, and we need to be reaching out to those people in the jails. I would love to see those folks eligible for Tennessee Reconnect. That's kind of a dream of mine. Unfortunately, they're not. I would love to see them eligible for federal financial aid. Why not? I think we're missing a great leg to our workforce by not having a stronger presence in our jails to reduce recidivism. Because quite frankly, the way to reduce recidivism is to help people understand purpose and confidence, right? And how do we do that? Is we train them.
Just to follow up on that, you may have seen, but we have a TCAT trailer over at the jail right now, and we do have programs.
I saw that.
In partnership
That's great.
with, and we've got with Brooks and stuff, we've got another $200,000 grant to help bring more programs into jail, and we're redoing a program space internally in the jail just to accommodate some of these learning modules that we're wanting to introduce.
We've got a lot of competent people that are sitting in our jails right now that we've got to connect with. So that's great. I did see that as I was driving around today. So that's awesome. Thank you. Sir.
So being the industry representative here, specifically, our plant is very highly automated, and sometimes we get some students that come from school and get the deer in the headlights look. They've got a good education, but it's just there's a further need. So what would you do to partner with industry, not just ours, but other industry, where the students are more prepared or better prepared than they are today for that newer, more highly skilled automation in industry? So that really, and there's two parts of this, is right now I'm spending about a year getting them up to speed before there is a return on investment. So the challenge for me is, do I hire straight from school, or do I try to find somebody who's from that experience pool? How would you work with industry to make sure that they're more ready to hit the ground running?
That's probably a two-part question for me that I would say. Number one, when we talk about incumbent workers, and I could give you an example, one of the things that we've recently done with A.O. Smith is we created a 6 weeks robotic training with FANUC. We hired part-time a local industry guy, and he helped develop and teach at night a robotics course for that industry. But also, one of the things that I love, and I've put it in my book there, is apprenticeship training. It's the most sustainable workforce development model in the world. And when I say that, when you have that apprenticeship developed for a company, that's one of the things. One of the major apprentice programs that we've done is mechatronics. So that's a multi-crafted industrial mechanic, which includes robotics. But when you have that, so an apprenticeship, you have two parts: your related training and instruction, which is your classroom, and your on-the-job training. And that on-the-job training has to be customized for that specific industry. So that would be my plan, is to help our local industry realize the importance of apprenticeships, because when you have that apprenticeship that's in place, you're not so worried when Bob retires, what are we going to do? Because nobody knows how to work on this piece of equipment. Well, when you got that apprenticeship in place, Jim and Jerry, they've already been through the OJT. They know how to work on that equipment. So you can, I think it's a two-part model though, but helping with structured training, also a continual conversation with our instructor. What you need, what do we need to be doing? I think there's a lot of value. At RCAM, we have what's called the Advanced Manufacturing Partnership. We meet every month at RCAM with our manufacturing partners, with economic development partners, with our chambers, and with ECD. And because quite frankly, you don't often see education and industry cross paths, right? But you have to be intentional about that. That would be my plan, is to ensure that we have intentional conversation with our industry.
So as important as it is to have great partnerships with the industry and your community, it's also equally, if not as more important, to get someone a job that's going to this school. So what's your plan to get these students jobs, the qualified students, and improve their quality of life in that job?
So I think, at Northeast State, I manage the career services as well, looking for possible internships so that those students can go get their feet wet while they're in school. I think internships are almost as good as apprenticeship programs. So I think that, and along with those partnerships, one example, when I was at Eastman, I could call up the TCAT instructors in welding and have a very candid conversation about someone's coming out. So ensuring that these instructors have got that kind of relationship with our industry is very important for that career pathway for our students.
I'll take one of Regent Hatch's questions that he asked another candidate earlier. How do I say it? Not step on toes. I'll just say it. We're big about how big can we get your class? How many people can we put in your class? And he had mentioned earlier, is it better to have smaller classes and more hands-on to where you can, for instance, in my classroom, I'm looking at 30 students next trimester. And if I've only got 10 computers that I've got to re-image, I'm having to say, you three work on this computer. So in your eyes, is it better to have big classrooms or smaller classrooms where you can do more of one-on-ones and more hands-on to where people aren't sharing everything in your classroom?
Well, I realize numbers are important to keep the doors open, but I would never, ever want to sacrifice quality for quantity, because you dilute your education and you will ultimately not be producing valuable trained employees for your industry. So although it's a difficult balance, I know, but we never want to sacrifice quality for quantity.
So building upon that, what would your plans be for growth and development here in McMinnville if we wanted to support more than 30 people in the classroom?
Well, I think, just come in, understand the budget, understand what a budget and enrollment has looked like for probably the last 3 years. Couldn't look at the last 12 months, I'm sure things have been a bit challenging, but look at the last 3 years. Number two, looking at industry, what's industry need? The Tennessee School Board Association, they've got a great website that gives you industry needs and possible career growth for every occupation that you can really think of. So I think digging into that data to see where the industry growth is and going from there would be my plan.
Your answer about getting to the parents to change the perception and to get them on board, you're not the first person to talk about that. But I'd be interested to know if you have any thoughts about how do we get parents, teachers, guidance counselors, and students to think about TCAT as a first option instead of a, oh my gosh, is that all that's the last option. I want to go to real college where I can owe somebody $200,000 in debt when I get out, have a liberal arts degree that nobody knows what I can do and won't pay me for. So that's really swell, but how do you think we can turn that message around so that people go, wow, that seems like the best option for me?
Well, back to that marketing plan, you've got to have someone that can tell the story. You got to be able to reach those students that's been successful when they've left here. And you got to let them know we still need you. We need you telling your story. We need you on our recruiting events with us. Hopefully your local industry is going to understand that, that for the future of their workforce, we need them telling those stories to these high schools and to these parents. So that's probably the best way that I know is giving real life situations for success stories to help them understand that there's true value in competency-based technical education.
Well, an opportunity for young high school kids to listen to old people like me versus people that are 20, 21, 22 and just did it. That's a whole lot better option.
Exactly.
I'm going to put you on the spot. We've got to tour our campus here today. If Regent Hatch said king for a day, but I'll say president for a day, what would you change? You've got to walk around and see our campus. Just on what you've seen today, what would you change if you could change one thing in that one day?
Well, I didn't get to tour the robotics, but probably expand the robotics, expand the machine shop. I didn't get to go, but you're saying you need more. I guess expansion would be expansion. But I think the robotics, when you look at how highly automated industry is, we've got to be in the game. And we're seeing IT and robotics and very closely knitted together. So we would have to have those two together as well.
From your perspective, what challenges is there with the transfer between clock hours and credit hours? So where you're coming from now, you're on a credit hour basis. TCATs obviously are on the clock hours. Talk to us a little bit about the challenges you see there.
Well, that one gets sticky a lot of times with faculty, I think, at the community college. But, I think we've got, coming out of Chat State, we've got one of the best models in the state with the TCAT at Chattanooga State. Their articulation agreements, they've got the best in the state. The challenges come down to sometimes we're competing for the same students, but we need to realize that maybe we're not. We're just trying to help students progress. So it comes down to ensuring that we've got a relationship with our community college, helping them and their faculty understand that we are producing quality trained candidates that they can take into their programs with any doubt, no doubt. I think the challenge comes in just the communication and helping communication between the faculty and the staff of the institutions.
Okay, I have a question. So we talked a lot about the fun things about program development and TCAT awareness, and but as we all know, there are some things that aren't so fun as far as reporting and federal, state reporting, things like that, accreditation. So what's your experience and involvement with processes like accreditation and there are different reporting functions like iPads, which spans across multiple departments. That's done every year. What's your experience with that and involvement as far as like getting, especially with accreditation, campus-wide involvement and communicating that so the whole campus is on the same page?
So I just participated in the reaccreditation at Northeast State with SACS. I wasn't even close to being in charge of that, but I did participate some there. As far as council occupation education, I haven't had a lot of experience there, but it's very important. It's very important that everyone involved, everybody at the institution is involved in that reaccreditation for sure. It's what we stand on, right? Whether it's SACS, whether it's the Council of Occupation Education. The one that I've dealt with the most is the Federal Department of Labor. That's my accrediting body for an apprenticeship program. So without them, we don't have a lot to stand on. So as far as your question is data, is that what's my thoughts on the data?
Well, just kind of going about to making sure those things happen in a timely fashion, and the things that are campus-wide, getting the involvement and folks, on the same page. And
it'll take a transparent, continuous conversation of why and how you're going to get there. Because when reaccreditation comes up, it can't be one person. It's got to be everyone involved.
And then, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and ask my second one. It kind of rolls off of there. Tell us how you go about, what's your approach to building culture? And that's culture among the staff and faculty and the students, and then as well at our offsite campus, because it's often that, evening and offsite campuses get forgotten sometimes. And so how do you go about creating culture to include everyone? What's your approach to that?
I guess my approach is through relationships and being present. You got to be there. Got to get to know people. Back to the old John Wooden quote, people really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's how you lead. That's how I've led. That's how I will continue to lead if I'm given the position.
So to build on communications, when it comes to talking with your faculty, your staff, and your students, what is your policy whenever it comes to someone wanting to talk to you? Would you prefer an open door, someone just come and knock and say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Or would you prefer a sit-down meeting scheduled?
I would prefer open door. I mean, I realize there are times and situations where it would require a schedule, but my door in my current position is open, very open to communication to my staff and students always. That's my preference. Again, I realize there are times where you would need to schedule that.
Thank you.
So here at school at our RIM program, we have 2 classes, a day and a night class. And sometimes we have students that need modified schedules because they can't, make it, have to leave maybe an hour early from class or something like that. Are you okay with modified schedules, or do you think it should be one set? You get here at 8, you leave at 2:30, there's no in between.
I would want to ensure that competency is being met. That's when we compromise that, we compromise everything we do. So I'm willing to listen to that, but we always, and I'm going to take the into account what the faculty member says, but we got to ensure that our customer is the student, they're getting what they need, and our customer in the industry are getting what they need. So I'm definitely open to it, but I would never want to sacrifice competency for that either.
So essentially what you're saying is as long as somebody's meeting their baseline or exceeding it, you'd be okay with them being able to have their job outside of here. Because as you know, most people that attend here are full-time adults that have to have jobs to attend here.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes. But again, we have to ensure competency. We don't want to sacrifice that.
Okay.
Describe to us 3 of your major accomplishments that you are most proud.
Work, I'm assuming.
Work related, yes.
Okay. Well, at 27, I started, I left a production management job as a helper, a pipe fitter helper, welder. I'd never struck an arc. So at 31, I graduated as an apprentice, a pipe fitter, apprentice, welder. And so that was a big accomplishment for me. Then I would say the work that I've been able to do at RCAM to help students in industry and the creation of multiple apprenticeship programs has been a great accomplishment for me as well. And then number 3, education attainment has been I finished my MBA in 12 months. That was a huge accomplishment for me as well.
Okay. So you're not from Warren County, you're not from this area. And so there's a big learning curve, connecting with all the players. So what's your plan or your formula for building those relationships and that teamwork model that you've referred to a couple of times?
Well, I'm not exactly sure of the strength of the chambers, but I think number 1 is getting involved in your chamber of commerce, because they tend to have relationships with most of your major players in your industry. So whether it be on the board, I'm the chairman of the workforce development for Kingsport Chamber. I have been for 2 years now. So working to try to get in those top positions and supporting those chamber of commerces, then getting to know the local commissioners and mayors, because they're the salesman for, you're the salesman for Warren County, right? Ultimately, and you're looking for ways. You know where the need is, so relationships there as well. So I think that would be my starting point, is ensuring that I've got a relationship with the chamber and with local manufacturing management and local elected officials. But you're right, that would be my steepest learning curve. I enjoy building relationships.
One of the questions that's been typed in previously was for the candidate to explain what they would do to grow and develop the dual enrollment. So if you could talk to that, please.
Okay. Well, it comes down to a good relationship with your CTE directors. But also, I hate to go back to this, but you don't want to grow dual enrollment programs without opportunity, right? We have to ensure that there's opportunity for those programs. We won't have those salesmen if we don't, right? We won't have those people to come back. So my plan would be strong relationship with the CTE directors, with the principals in the counties, and ensuring that there's a job for those. But quite frankly, especially in our rural communities, dual enrollment is the answer for our TCATs and our community colleges to continue to grow. So that would be a high priority So work on that is what we're doing on.
In terms of longevity, what are your plans for if you were given the position of TCAT president of McMinnville?
Grow TCAT McMinnville. I'm ready to move my family here. I'm ready to be a resident here in one of these counties. I mean, I'm assuming that housing is a challenge, just like it is most anywhere in Tennessee. So, but I'm ready to be here, ready to work, and ready to retire TCAT McMinnville if you guys let me.
Are we all just tired?
Other questions?
I've got one. You referred to it a little bit a couple of times already before, and I did earlier. Now, oftentimes there's a stigma attached to education at TCATs and community colleges and certification programs that you have that are sometimes fast-paced. A lot of times people think that's inferior and it's really not meeting industry needs. So how do we help kind of sales pitch and change that stigma from a local level up? And what role would you or TCAT play in that?
I think it comes back down to the data. I mean, we look at the employment rates for these folks, look at median salaries for these folks, and we use that data to tell our story. That's, you know, with hard data, it's hard to argue, but you can certainly change culture, I think, with data. Did I answer your question? That would be my plan. I think we've got to be looking at that, because if we're not looking at opportunity and we're for certain occupations and data of previous graduates, you know, we could be sending someone on a wild goose chase almost with an occupation that's not there. But I definitely think that's how we change the mindset culture.
One of the things that I think is important, and we've overlooked it previously, but it's starting to gain momentum again, is those public-private partnerships between our CTE programs and TCATs and our industry, and grooming our curriculums to meet the growing needs and ever-changing needs, rather than just churning out somebody with a diploma or sending them off to MTSU for a degree. We're oftentimes falling short on the critical needs that we have locally to meet the challenges. Workforce is an issue everywhere all across the nation, particularly in rural communities when they can drive 50 or 60 miles and make $20,000 more a year than staying here. If people had those skills and there was job opportunities here and we could groom a program with a partnership with private industry, then to me it's a win. We bring those people back rather than educating people that take their skills somewhere else.
And so your question on that one?
Just elaborate a little bit on your thoughts and ideas about building those public-private partnerships.
So true economic development, the really only opportunity that you've got for it is to have those partnerships. Because again, if education and if industry are going down paths, how are you ever going to know what you need to do? So you've got to be intentional and consistent with those conversations. That would be my plan. Something like the Advanced Manufacturing Partnership. We've rotated to different facilities, but the only way that you can ensure that your institution is meeting the needs of your region is to communicate with your customers, communicate with your students. Do we have a real need for that flexible schedule? Are we meeting our customers' needs? But my plan would be for that communication to be often.
questions?
So I've got one more. In looking at TCAT, I'm a career educator, so I think big picture stuff. We've had a couple of questions already alluding to a little bit about your impression of the campus and everything else. How does your mindset right now align with a vision for where you want to take TCAT?
Well, sometimes I think we get too caught up on facilities. The heart of education in general, but just specifically technical education, is through an instructor that can inspire kids to learn and give them that confidence. So I think from the ones that I've met here, we've got some really good instructors. But, you know, sometimes growth at our educational facilities is tough because it's almost that chicken or the egg concept. Do you bring a program before you've got opportunity, or do you wait for the opportunity and bring a program? It's a tough balance, but that's, again, where that communication comes from, to see the need. My plan would be, and from what I've seen, not here necessarily, but at any other institution, we've got to have a comprehensive dual enrollment strategy to ensure growth for our institutions, but that we're meeting our industry needs and opportunity for our kids. Did that kind of answer it? I don't have any specifics on how on here in McMinnville, but
investing in quality instruction to me is a key, because that's how you build credibility. That's how you expand programs. That's how you recruit new instructors and build that team even larger, so you can then ask for a larger campus or a bigger facility or an expanded operation.
Yes.
I know you've touched on this in a few of your answers about, building relationships and involvement with partners and in the community, but can you kind of maybe just tell what you've done where you are now, or in past experiences, how exactly you go about getting involved in the community? We do things now like we have what we call every year Autumn Street Fair and different things where we set up and get involved with the community, and people go out and administration goes to those things as well. But like presenting at county commission or things like that. Just what's your experience, or would be your plan, I guess, for direct community involvement?
Well, I think, like, I'll give you an example. For 2 years, I was on the Fun Fest. It's one of the largest street festivals in the state of Tennessee. I chaired the Makers Fair. So, we brought different makers in from the community, whether it was woodworking, which I'm not a woodworker, but 3D printing, but just, you got to be intentional looking for those opportunities. So those would be much the same ones that I would do, and ensuring that not only me, but everyone is involved, because we're all salesmen, basically, right? We're all salesmen for our programs. So we're looking for those opportunities.
When you had those fairs, did you have a bouncy house and cake? Because we hear that's big too.
There were some of those, but not at the Makers Fair.
Okay. Have you got any questions of this group that you hadn't asked already on Zoom, or anything else you want to know from this group?
I think I asked it last time, but are there specific things, programs that you're looking to grow right now, or?
Anyone?
Well, I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
So obviously, without saying, we want all of our programs to expand, and you've touched on that. But we, in conversations with our local workforce board and industries and county officials and things like that, we see a need for additional programs such as HVAC, building construction, and we're already working on a couple of those, but, really expanding those industrial programs and creating a space for that here to offer that, because those industries are telling us that they need workers. And then, enhancing our industrial maintenance, like John was talking about, to include more automation and robotics. So I think, there's the overall growth, which is obvious, but then there's that, just those couple of areas that we're really trying to focus in on, what we don't already have in workforce in the area needs.
Yeah, one of the things that we've recently done at our campus, those facility barriers sometimes can be overcame through apprenticeship programs, and we have started a carpentry apprenticeship. Someone said, well, we don't have anywhere to put it. Well, what we've done is we partnered with J Street. We have a carpentry program, and we've hired a part-time instructor. We also have metal buildings as well that we're using NCCR. That they did the core together, but now they're going to be split come in the fall. So how we're working that is they meet 1 night a week in the classroom. We've got a structured OJT that's came from the industry partner, and that instructor will go out and certify them on those competencies on the job site. So again, another example of how important partnerships are. A lot of times we've left the carpentry trades out, but it's very important. And HVAC and building automation, I think we've seen it recently in a lot of our new TBR facilities, is that the technology and building automation has outpaced the workforce. So we find a lot of challenges in our new facilities just with the HVAC because it hasn't been installed properly.
We've looked also at copying of the truck driver CDL program that they have like in Crossville, and because there's a huge need for that as well. And then another thing that the previous director and then Nathan as well, doing correctional officer training as a dual enrollment program. We've already talked to MTSU. There's a huge need because there's no training in Middle Tennessee for correctional officers, and it would be a great opportunity to grow that program as well. And MTSU is ready to help because they have a criminal justice program there. And we have a criminal justice class at the high school, so it would be a great ability to transition into a whole program for training, because that's one of the hardest things we get the COs trained, and oftentimes they leave. But if we're attracting them here and training our own workforce locally, then our chances of keeping them are even better.
Yeah, TCAT Elizabeth, they just created a new correctional officer.
Yes. We've looked at that one.
So it would be a great model, I think. So,
and we've looked at doing some short-term, Nation and I talked about it, short-term soft skills classes as well. Because a lot of industries say, there's just a lot of raw recruits, so to speak, right out of high school or young adults that never really had a permanent job. And they just come from one job to the next. One of they lack just some of those soft skills, time management and financial management, their personal finance type stuff, just simple things that oftentimes drags them to the point of self-ruin.
right.
So I'm gonna use a question that we had earlier. Describe yourself in 3 words.
I didn't hear the question.
3 words to describe yourself.
Hardworking.
You count that as one?
We can have.
I think it's half and half of it, right? Okay, sorry. Fun, integrity.
Awesome.
I've got a question. From each candidate, not just you, but from each candidate we've had today, we've heard about building partnerships. I'm assuming that takes a lot of time. I learned real quick when I first interviewed for the job, and Nathan said, it's from 7 to 3, and I said, I can do that. It's easy. I didn't realize till after maybe my first month, I'm going home and I'm writing out a lecture for the next day, and I'm making a test for the end of the chapter, and I realized they didn't tell me about that. So where do you find the time to build those relationships, plus be our president? at the same time?
Well, president, I would never see a president role as being 37.5 hour week job. It's going to take more time than that. So I will be committed to the time that it takes to help build those relationships and not sacrificing your personal time.
When I used to recruit interns, they would always ask, so what are the working hours? I said, we work half-time. You come in at 6, work till 6, the other half of the day you can do whatever you want to do. And they would look at you like, really? And then, but the point there is, you got a job to do. You don't clock in at 8, clock out at 5 every day. You got to do the work. And, you're right. I mean,
I've had them ask me, what time do I clock in? I say, I don't ever remember clocking out.
there you go. Any more questions? All right, closing argument. Heath, tell us what you want to tell us about why you're the best candidate for the job.
Well, I think that you'll find that I'm a hard worker again, with integrity. I care about people. I care about people getting better. And that's the way to do that, is through education. So I'm passionate about technical education. I'm passionate about students. I'm passionate about economic development. So, and I think at the very core, economic development starts here. I think
All right.
That's me.
Well, thanks again for your time.
Thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
What time?